Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto and I'm a photographer. Today I have with me a Pentax that broke into the Leica territory. Up until spring 2023, Leica pretty much owned the dedicated monochrome camera segment because they were the only manufacturer to make such cameras. But in the spring 2023, this camera came out and broke into that Leica territory. This is the Pentax Monochrome. This is not going to be a camera review. In this video we are going to talk about some of the special features of a dedicated monochrome sensor and if a dedicated monochrome sensor even makes any sense. And then I'm gonna share a few thoughts on this Pentax Monochrome and can it be a Leica substitute? Here are a couple of key features in a monochrome sensor. In a dedicated monochrome sensor, every pixel counts 100% because each and every pixel only records the amount of light and no color information. There is no color filter on the sensor. In a Bayer filter color sensor, there are twice as many green pixels compared to blue and red pixels. So, for example, if there is a scene that is dominated by red color, the green pixels in the sensor can't do much because they can't record that red information. So when the camera is processing the information coming from the sensor, it has to sort of guess what is happening in those green pixel areas because those green pixels can't record the red light. So the final picture involves quite a bit of processing called demosaicing. The camera uses a certain algorithm to figure out what is happening in those pixels that can't record the light that is hitting the sensor. A dedicated monochrome sensor does not have that problem because each and every pixel only records the amount of light and the color of the light doesn't matter. And therefore a monochrome sensor picture is more detailed than a comparable Bayer sensor picture. Also, the high ISO performance of the monochrome sensor is superior because there are no color filters on the pixels to suck up the light. On the flip side, there is of course one significant restriction. It is the lack of color. You can't shoot color pictures on a dedicated monochrome camera like this Pentax Monochrome. This Pentax Monochrome has an APS-C sized 26 megapixel dedicated monochrome sensor. And while 26 megapixels doesn't sound that good or fantastic these days, and to some maybe the sensor size is kind of small too, but trust me, the image quality is fantastic because the per pixel sharpness is so much better in a dedicated monochrome sensor compared to a Bayer filter color sensor. I really love the tonality from this sensor. It's very film-like, especially the mid-tones look a lot like something like FP4 or some other medium speed film. The tonality is very soft and easy to work with if you want to push it one way or the other. There's plenty of sharpness too and detail even though we only have 26 megapixels and an APS-C sensor. And the high ISO performance is really good. Here is a simple quick comparison to the Sony a6700. Both these cameras have the same size sensor, the same amount of pixels. I shot both pictures raw, the same exact exposure, the same exact conditions. The ISO value was 12,800 and it's quite easy to see how much better the Pentax picture looks. The high ISO noise grain is very tight and beautiful and hardly even visible at ISO 12,800. The Sony picture looks quite harsh. The grain structure or the noise is not pretty and also the tonality is much more abrupt or rough. You could of course run the Sony picture through a noise reduction app and get better results, but this is what you get straight from the camera. There is one thing though that you have to pay attention to whenever you are shooting on a monochrome camera, and that is the highlight clipping. Even if you shoot raw, there's very little or hardly any recovery room in those highlights if you overexpose your pictures. Therefore, it's vital to pay attention to your exposures and not overexpose if you want full tonality and full highlight details in your pictures. With a color original, you have 3 channels to work with, and if any of those 3 channels has some recoverable highlight info, you can recover at least part of those clipped highlights in your favorite raw processing app if you shoot raw. At the start of this video, I said this camera entered the Leica territory. But could this be a Leica Substitute? Well, I'm not sure of that, because those people who want a Leica, they want a Leica and nothing else. The cheapest Leica monochrome, when I'm recording this video, will cost you about $6,200. That would be the Leica Q monochrome. And the cheapest Leica with interchangeable lenses would cost you about $9,200, plus some lenses, of course, because without lenses you can't take any pictures. This Pentax camera body will cost you about $2,200. So you can get almost 3 of these for the price of the cheapest Leica monochrome. We're talking about new prices, of course. You can always find something second-hand. But even those second-hand Leicas tend to be quite expensive. But then there are a lot of people like myself who either can't afford a Leica or simply refuse to pay so much for a camera. And for us, this camera offers a really attractive entry to digital black and white photography. And that's why I think this camera is really significant. There are some companies in the US at least who can convert your color camera to monochrome. But those conversions are not cheap either. And those are only conversions, and I think this kind of a camera that is built and designed from scratch to be a dedicated monochrome camera is far superior to a converted color camera. I absolutely love the output, the pictures that come out of this camera. But I feel the sensor is in a wrong camera body. My problem is, you guessed it already, the size and the weight. I mean, look at these 2 cameras. This is the Sony a6700. Both these cameras have the same sensor size, same amount of pixels, and the Sony Sigma combo weighs 838 grams and the Pentax combo 1607 grams. Almost exactly 2 times as much as the Sony Sigma combo. And these lenses are almost the same. The Pentax lens is a 16 to 50 f2.8 and the Sigma lens on the Sony is an 18 to 50 millimeter f2.8. In that 800 grams you can fit an iPad or a couple of extra lenses or some personal items. And it's a lot also in a carry-on luggage these days, because those airlines, they are scrutinizing those carry-on bags more and more these days. That being said, this camera sort of shrinks in your hand when you are using it. When I was walking down the streets of Helsinki, my hometown, and some other places here in Finland, I had good fun with this camera, and the size and the weight, they never held me back. And of course this camera is so well built and robust and all that, and I'm sure many people love this form factor. However, the numbers don't lie. This camera simply is too big and heavy for me, and I really do wish that someday Pentax Ricoh would make a Monochrome GR. There are so many GR users who like to convert their color pictures to black and white. Even this regular GR 3 and 3X, they are selling pretty well for what they are. Pretty niche cameras, not a camera for everyone, but still they are selling really well. And therefore it's easy to believe that a Monochrome GR would also be a big hit. And I also think it would pretty much be a no-brainer for Ricoh Pentax to make a Monochrome GR. They already have the sensor, the processor, and whatever the monochrome camera requires. It wouldn't probably be too hard to implement them in this smaller GR-sized camera body. But why would you even buy a dedicated monochrome camera? They are more expensive and you can't shoot color pictures on them. And you can easily convert your color pictures to black and white. And the Color Original also lets you play with the color channels and change the look of your final black and white picture. With a dedicated monochrome camera, you need physical filters over your lens if you want to change the tonality. For example, let's say you want that blue sky to appear really deep black in your black and white picture. You need to add a red filter on top of your lens when you shoot the picture, because you can't play with the color channels in post, because there is only one channel, the black and white channel. I'd say the color conversion fits if you are not a hardcore black and white shooter, and maybe you like to compare the color and black and white versions side by side of the same scene, and you like to play with the color channels and see how it affects the black and white result. And that's quite fun. I do that a lot myself, play with the channels and see how the sky changes or the skin tone or something else. It's quite fun. However, if you really love black and white and you're not interested in colors at all, they only represent a certain grayscale value to you. In that case, a color camera may become a distraction and a hindrance to you, and all that unnecessary color information may also slow down and complicate your post-processing workflow. That's when a monochrome camera is just the perfect image-making device for you. No matter how you feel about this, I think you definitely should give a monochrome camera a go before you completely dismiss it. I hope this little monochrome conversation was interesting, and if you found this useful, please do consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link down below for that if you don't live in Finland. Thank you so much, and I'll definitely see you in the next one.